Welcome back to the book of Genesis. We're looking at the patriarchal age, obviously between Adam and Moses, and we're looking at Genesis after the flood, the geography of Canaan. So Abraham moved from Sumer up to Padan, then down to Shechem. So from Haran to Canaan, and Abram obeyed God. He took Sarah and Lot and left Haran. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. He entered Canaan and came to Shechem. God appeared to Abram after Abram built an altar and worshipped God. Into the land of Canaan. So Abram went forth as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Canaan. Abram took Sarah and Lot his wife, and Lot his nephew, and all the possessions which they had accumulated, and the persons which they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. Thus they came to the land of Canaan. Abram responded to the call of God by leaving his home and extended family, and departing for the land to which he had been directed. From Haran, the traveller designing to go down into Canaan can take two different roads. The King's Highway, this road ran down through Damascus. From there its course ran along the west bank of the Jordan River Valley, past the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, and down into the Sinai Desert when it reached Ezion-Geber on the Gulf of Aqaba. Or, from Haran to Canaan, the way of the Philistines. This route ran along the Mediterranean Sea, past the Phoenician cities of Sidon and Byblos, along the plains of Sharon and the cities of Philistines, and then into Egypt. Canaan. If Haran is the hub of the wheel, then Canaan is a major spoke of that wheel. The land of Canaan acts as a narrow land bridge between Mesopotamia and the continent of Africa. This is a relatively small area of land, no larger than Wales. The name Palestine takes its name from the ancient name Peleset, meaning land of the Philistines. That would be a later designation. For now, it was known as the land of Canaan. The topography of Canaan. Canaan is one of the most diverse lands in the world. Within a small area one can find snow-capped mountains, fertile plains, steaming deserts and lush forests. It is home both to sparkling waterways full of fish, as well as the most desolate body of water in the world. The coastal plain. The coastline of Canaan is devoid of any natural harbours from Tyre all the way down to Egypt. The plain itself is generally low, fertile and open. It is broken only once where the Mount Carmel promontory juts out into the Mediterranean. So here you see the coastal plain, the hill country, Jordan Valley and Transjordan Plateau. The coastal plain varied width from 6 miles in the north to 25 miles in the south. It consisted of wide valleys, level plains, rolling hills, well watered and fertile and heavily cultivated. Phoenicia. This area was inhabited by a group of Canaanites called Phoenicians, great sailors. The land was too narrow really to farm. People turned to shipbuilding, sailing and trading as a result, and became their ships sailed everywhere. And Sharon, the area stretched between 45 miles between Mount Carmel and Joppa. Wet, marshy area of land. This part of Canaan plays very little part in the Old Testament story. Philistia, the area controlled by the Philistines. It stretched 40 miles from Joppa to Gaza. 12 to 25 miles wide, it was one of the richest parts of the land. The only interruption in the plain is Mount Carmel. The busiest trade route of the land ran along the coastal plain. The route ran from Egypt to Mount Carmel into the valley of Jezreel. So the central hill country contains two mountain ranges, Lebanon, Mount Lebanon, and Anti-Lebanus, Mount Hermon. North of Palestine the ranges divide and the Jordan Valley lies between. The central hill country or mountain range, a long range of mountains, runs parallel to the coastal plain from the mountains of Lebanon all the way down to the tip of the Sinai Peninsula. The lowest point of this ridge is 15 feet, and many of its segments rise to twice that height. The central hill country or mountain range, this central spine, is a natural impediment to east-west travel. At some places it consists of up to 5 parallel ridges, each separated by deep valleys. This mountain range is broken only once by the long valley of Jezreel, also known by the more popular name of Armageddon or Harmageddon, Valley of Megiddo. Galilee, Ephraim and Judah or Judea. Upper Galilee, high rugged hills, called worthless by King Hiram of Tyre, because Tyre had lots of trees, rarely mentioned in Bible history. Lower Galilee, low hills, wide valleys, fertile, prosperous. Important New Testament places are designated here. Cities in Galilee are Nazareth, Capernaum, Chorazin and Cana. Ephraim and Samaria, high rugged peaks, broad, spacious valleys. Best known peaks give Mount Gilboa, Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. Shechem is located here. Judah, 50-mile stretch of land, dome-like mountains and shallow valleys. Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Mount of Olives and Hebron are located in this area. Judah, the western side, is called the Shephelah, fertile, well-watered foothills. Formed a really natural defense line. Fortress cities called Lachish, Deber, Libnah and Beth Shemesh. The eastern side is called the wilderness of Judea or Judah. Rugged slopes, barren wasteland, drops down to the valley of the Dead Sea. Drops from 2,680 feet above to 1,292, well below sea level. The Jordan Valley, part of the Great Rift Valley, 2 to 15 miles wide, towering cliffs on either side, lush tropical growth in the valley. The river begins at foot of Mount Hermon. The Jordan Valley. This valley is part of the Afro-Arabian Rift Valley, one of the longest and deepest fissures in the world, following a geological fault line from the Amanus Mountains in southeastern Turkey through Syria, Lebanon and Israel, down the Gulf of Aqaba, then running the entire length of the Red Sea to Ethiopia, and then continuing southward to become a part of the Great African Rift Valley. So the Jordan Valley, Lake Hula, Sea of Galilee and the Dead Sea. It's about Lake Hula is about 12 miles from Mount Hermon. The dimensions roughly 4.5 miles by 3.5 miles and a swampland all around. It plays no significant part in the Bible story. The Jordan River finds its major source in the melting snows of Mount Hermon, which towers 9,200 feet above sea level. Hundreds of small streams cascade down and flow into Lake Hula. Since the formation of the nation of Israel in 1948, the lake has been drained for farmland. This has created an ecological imbalance in the Sea of Galilee. The swamp used to act as a natural filter, straining out any impurities from the waters which flowed southward into the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is about 11 miles from Lake Hula. There's a 900 feet drop in elevation, over 80 plus miles. The dimensions roughly 12.5 miles by 7.5 miles. The east side hills rise sharply. There's a high plateau. There's no easy access. On the west side, valleys and plains separate hills, and there's a lot of easy access. Old Testament name, Shinnereth. New Testament names, Galilee, Tiberias, Lake of Gennesaret. Jesus spent much time on or near the sea. The Sea of Galilee rests in the crater of an extinct volcano which in ages past spewed out its lava over the Golan Heights to the east. The sea is 660 feet below sea level and is surrounded on all sides by steep hills. At 209 meters below sea level, it's the lowest freshwater lake on Earth, the second lowest lake in the world after the Dead Sea, which is a saltwater lake. It's not really a sea, it's called a sea because of tradition. The lake is also known on modern maps as Lake Galilee or Lake Tiberias in the region of Galilee. From the Sea of Galilee, the Jordan River runs south down the sunken rift. This narrow valley used to be a fertile forest full of wildlife, including lions and boar. The Dead Sea is 65 miles from and 600 feet below Galilee. Dimensions roughly 48 miles by 10 miles. The word Jordan derives from a verb meaning to descend. It flows downhill in its long meandering course until it reaches the Dead Sea. The shore of the Dead Sea is the lowest point on the surface of Earth, lying 1,300 feet below sea level. The Dead Sea is 304 meters or 997 feet deep, the deepest hypersaline lake in the world, a salinity of 342 g kilogram or 34.2. It is 9.6 times as salty as the ocean and one of the world's saltiest bodies of water. As a result, no fish can live in its waters. The Geography of Canaan 4, the Transjordan Plateau. The Anti-Lebanons rise quickly beyond the Jordan Valley. The plateau of Moab forms 3,000 foot high wall. Moses viewed the promised land from Mount Nebo. It was a land that Reuben, Gad and half of Manasseh occupied. The Arabian desert was not nearly so impassable in antiquity as it is today. Several trade routes dissected its breadth. Rising up sharply from the Jordan Valley is a high, fertile tableland between 30 to 80 miles in width and stretching from Damascus to the Gulf of Aqaba. The Transjordan Plateau. There's Bashan, there's Gilead, there's Moab, and there's Edom. It contains 4 tributary rivers, the Yarmuk, the Jabbok, and the Arnon and the Zered. The King's Highway is a trade route. It ran the length of the plateau to Mesopotamia. Taxes were often collected from travellers as they made their way up or down. The northern regions of this tableland are well watered and fertile. It was often fought over. The climate of Canaan. In Egypt, the chief deities were the sun and the Nile River. The most important deity of the Canaanites was Baal, the storm god of wind and rain and thunder. It never needed to rain in Egypt or Mesopotamia since their river systems were fed by mountains hundreds of miles away. Canaan, on the other hand, had no great rivers and depended heavily upon the regular rainfall to feed the small mountain streams which irrigated the land. The early rains begin in October and the rainy season continues through until the latter rains of April and May. The heaviest rainfall usually comes during the winter months. There's usually not a drop of rain from June to September. The topography of the country is broken enough to provide some striking local variations in temperature. In summer along the coastal plains, the winds tend to hold down temperatures from reaching oppressive levels. Further inland, where the wind has lost its effect, the temperatures can rise to stifling degrees. In the winter months along the coastal plain, the climate is mild and frost is virtually unknown due to the incoming wind of the Mediterranean Sea. As one travels up into the mountains, temperatures decrease markedly with height. The winter months in the mountain regions produce a long-lying snow cover. The inhabitants of Canaan. There's the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Inhabitants were not nations, but rather large tribes, most descended from Canaan, son of Ham, son of Noah. Canaanite and Amorite may be used for both a collective and individual sense. Amorites were one of the strongest of the tribes. They controlled much of the Fertile Crescent. They had a stronghold in the east before the defeat of Sihon and Og. They are found on the west side also in smaller bands. Hittites were strong in the central hill country. Abraham bought the cave of Machpelah from a Hittite. This was claimed to be a Bible mistake up to the early part of the 1900s. The Hittites were supposed to be never appeared in archaeology or historical records, and therefore people pointed it as one of the mistakes of the Bible until they dug them up in a fantastic, huge race. The Hivites were a smaller, less powerful tribe, along with the Girgashites, Perizzites, and Jebusites. The Gibeonites were part of this tribe. Jebusites controlled Jerusalem in the days of Joshua. Still maintained control in the days of David. Giants, called by different names: sons of Anak, Anakim, sons of Arba, Rephaim, Emim, Zamazumim, Horites. Goliath is a descendant of these. Canaan was the land to which Abram was called. It was a land of promise. Abraham's response to this call was threefold. Abram responded with unquestioned obedience. So Abram went forth as the Lord had spoken to him. We do not read of any debate. There is no argument. We're not told that Abram asked any questions or he set down any conditions. God said go, and Abram went, as he had been told. Abram responded with justifying faith. How do I know this? After all, Abram's faith will not be mentioned until chapter 15. We know that Abram responded with faith because we can read of his actions. Paul and James will later use Abraham and his faith and actions to help us see that true faith can only be seen in action, not words. Faith without works is not really faith at all. Abraham's obedience serves as a demonstration and confirmation of his faith. Abraham responded with evangelistic worship. There are two references in this passage that suggest such elements. The element of evangelism is seen in verse 6, where we read the Canaanites were in the land. The element of worship is seen 2 verses later when Abram built an altar and called upon the name of the Lord. We are called to do the same thing. We are to call upon the name of the Lord in the midst of a pagan society, so that they might hear us and see us and be drawn to the one whom we worship. If you got something out of this lesson, please feel free to come back and join us once more.